Hey, what's going on, everyone? What's up? What's going on? Hope you're doing great. Hope you're doing amazing. Hope you're doing fantastic, and hope you're keeping well. Dean Kulaweera here with today's live stream segment every Wednesday, 11 a.m. Eastern time zone. I'm right here live. And I just want to give a quick shout out to everyone on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram as well. Shout out to everyone on Instagram. I'm having some connection issues with Instagram. Like, I don't know. I always have something going on with Instagram every week. So my apologies to everyone on Instagram who might be getting a weak connection or whatever this problem is, but I'm going to have to keep it going. But if you're on Instagram and it's like screwing up and stuff, join me on YouTube or LinkedIn or Facebook or one of the other channels, right? Go to my profile, go to my Instagram profile, click on the Linktree link, and it'll have a link to all of my other social accounts. So I'm multi-streaming live on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter as well. So try using one of the other channels because it looks like there's some issues there with Instagram. But hey, anyway, getting back to today's segment. Look, I hope you're doing great, all right? I know things might be tough out there for some of you out there, but I'm here every week to remind you that with the right strategies, with the right techniques, with the right processes in place and consistency, perseverance, you got a whole bunch of that in place and sprinkle in a little bit of luck maybe here and there, and you're going to make it, folks. You're going to make it in your job search, whether you're actively looking, whether you're passively looking, whatever your situation is, all right? So don't be shy. Feel free to introduce yourself in the comments and let me know who you are. I want to know who you are. I want to know where you're tuning in from. I want to know what your field is, what your industry. And feel free to let people know in the comments if you're actively looking for work, right? If not myself, hey, maybe someone else out there will be watching and tuning in, and hey, you might be the perfect person for a role they have in mind, or maybe they might be the perfect organization that you've been looking for at this point in your job search, right? So we got some comments coming in. We got Sureka in the house who says, hi, sir. Thank you for your session. Hey, no worries, Sureka. No need to call me sir. You can call me Dean. It's no problem at all for you, for everyone out there. I know some cultures, some countries out there, you call, you got to use a very formalized way of addressing people. But here in good old Canada, hey, no problem calling me by first name, all right? So nobody has to call me sir or anything like that, all right? And besides that, it makes me feel old, right? So anyway, good to have you here, folks. Now, before I get into today's topic, and what I'm going to be speaking about today is something very key for your interviews. And that is the 4 steps in responding to interview questions. So it's going to be a very important session. Make sure you're ready to take notes and you're ready to, get kind of implement this into your own interviews, right? That will be coming up. I'm just going to quickly check if all is good on LinkedIn. Yeah, looks like all is good on LinkedIn. Perfect. That looks like I am live and everything is good, and I'm not speaking to myself, so that's a good thing. So yeah, feel free to keep the comments coming, folks. And before I get into today's topic, if you want to follow me on all my other social channels, check out my Linktree link. So that has all my social accounts. If you want to follow me on any of the other social channels, I'm on most other platforms. So that link is linktr.ee/DK Tech Recruiter. My apologies, everyone on Instagram. Looks like the stream is going in and out. So I guess I'm gonna cancel the. Well, I'll just leave it up there. Who knows? Maybe it'll fix itself. But anyway, those of you who want to follow me on all my other social channels, it's linktr.ee/DK Tech Recruiter. So feel free to check me out there. And make sure you hit like and make sure you reshare this stream with anyone else who might be interested in and benefit from today's session. And always appreciate the likes and the shares and especially the comments. All right. So definitely want to make sure you get value out of today's stream. So, one more thing, quick, before I get into today's topic is just some of the roles I'm actively currently recruiting on for tech in Toronto. This is primarily for the Greater Toronto area, not primarily, but it is for the Greater Toronto area. So I'm currently actively recruiting on two positions that are really hot priorities for me, and that is number one, I'm looking for a technical analyst. It's a technical. I mean, the position title is technical analyst, but by all means, it's a systems administrator role, senior systems administrator, someone at a senior level in their career, so 8+ years of experience, strong knowledge and expertise with Office 365, also which is now known as Microsoft 365, from my understanding of it. And this is a external customer client facing role. So this is not an internal role. This is someone who's going to be working on projects for end clients for my client. All right. So my client is an IT solutions provider. They work on projects in the private sector, the public sector, and you're going to be advising their clients in this area of systems administration, and again, especially sharing your expertise with Office 365, Microsoft 365, and any previous experience working for IT solutions providers is definitely a must-have. Second role I'm recruiting on is a solutions consultant. I'm looking for a solutions consultant. This is someone who comes from a strong IT networking and security background, very hands-on technical person throughout their career, but now more so in a delivery kind of a role. And again, this role as well is a client-facing role, as an external client-facing role, and extensive experience in IT solutions provider type of companies in the past is definitely a must-have for the role as well. Hey, if this sounds like you or someone you know, definitely feel free to let me know and send me a direct message. And look, if you're an IT professional, regardless of your field or your area, I don't care what your field or your area is in IT. If you're based out of Toronto or anywhere in Canada, definitely want to connect with you. Definitely want to stay in communication with you. So send me a direct message. Don't be shy. I'm happy to see if I can help you right now. Hey, worst case scenario, I help you in the future at some point, folks. All right. So that's what I'm recruiting on right now. Now let's get into today's topic. Now, before I get into the Q&A, and by the way, as I'm talking about today's topic, feel free to put any questions you have. It does not have to be related to today's topic. Anything job search related, folks, anything recruitment related. I'm here to provide you with value. I'm here to provide you with value add for being connected with me on LinkedIn or following me on whatever of those other job search channel, job search. I'm always thinking about job search, but any of those other social media channels you're on. My point is to come on here and provide value. All right. So, but that being said, it's up to you to get value out of these sessions. So don't be shy. Put in the comments any questions you have, job search related, recruitment related. No such thing as a stupid question. No such thing as a dumb question. And I'll do my best to respond and share my thoughts on that today. All right. So for those of you tuning on Instagram, if you could let me know in the comments, like, is there issues with the stream, or are you guys like hearing what I'm saying? Let me know in the comments, because I'm getting this message that the connection is being paused and stuff like that. All right. So anyway, I see that I got a request for someone who wants to join the stream. So Asha, I see your request. I'm gonna accept you into the stream when I get to the Q&A part. All right. So hang tight and appreciate you tuning in. All right. So today's topic, folks. All right. 4 steps when responding to job interview questions. All right. Now these are 4 steps that I recommend as you're responding to interview questions. Okay, so you're a candidate, you're at the interview, maybe it's a phone interview, maybe it's an in-person interview, maybe it's a video interview, right? Whatever the situation is, my recommendation is you need to take these 4 steps. Now, just because it's 4 steps, it does not mean that this is going to be like some lengthy stuff, because some of you are probably thinking, well, Dean, like, we got to respond right away. Like, we can't take time to take 4 steps. These 4 steps, folks, these should be happening within like split seconds, right? And don't let the split seconds intimidate you. Four very easy steps. All right. So step number 1, and you should be taking notes if you're tuning in. This is definitely a session you want to be taking notes. Step number 1, folks, is simply listen. All right. You simply want to listen, completely listen, put your full focus on the interviewer. Now, this might seem very, very obvious, and it's like, yeah, Dean, okay, big deal. Yeah, listen, like, what's the big deal with that? But I would say this is the part where a lot of people, and this is based on my experiences as a recruiter, folks, recruiting on hundreds and hundreds of positions, and probably speaking with and interacting with thousands of candidates over the years. The greatest mistake that I have observed people make is simply not even listening. You got to listen, folks. Look, that passion you have for what you do, that enthusiasm you have for what you do, that's great. That's amazing. I'm not saying don't have that passion and enthusiasm, but sometimes, and this is the case for all of us, sometimes our passion and enthusiasm for what we do gets in the way of us actually listening to the question being asked. So step number one is simply listen, folks. Okay, all that excitement you have, maybe some nervousness, some anxiety, you gotta find a way to calm that down. This session is not about calming that stuff down. Like that's a different topic. But step number one is simply listen. Okay, listen completely and entirely. Put all your focus and attention on the interviewer and simply listen to the question. And you got to silence your mind right now. Maybe some of you meditate. Maybe some of you are good at quietening your mind. Do not let your own thoughts interfere with your ability to simply listen to the question. And this is coming from, look, this is a weakness of mine. All right. I'm just going to put it out there. Look, I'm not perfect myself. Okay. I have a very active mind. I have a noisy mind. My mind's always, I'm always thinking about stuff. There's always things going on. So this is something sometimes that I struggle with myself, and I have to consciously remind myself, right? This is not some natural talent most of us have. I know that's the case for me. Like I have to remind myself, okay, someone's asking me a question, shut off my mind and let me listen completely to the question. So that's step number one at the interview. When you're being asked a question, step number one is simply quiet your mind, silence your mind. Don't start thinking about stuff, because the mistake so many of us make is before the interviewers even finish asking the question, we're already putting together a response, right? That's what most of that, and it happens naturally, folks. If you're doing this, don't feel bad. Like this is the case with all of us. I'd say most of us, majority of us out there, that's what we're doing, myself included. When someone asks me a question, while the question is being asked, I'm already putting together a response. I'm already thinking about things, already putting together examples and projects. I'm thinking about the past and stuff like this. So the first step, again, simply listen. Okay, resist the temptation to try to formulate a response right away. You want to simply listen, because the question might have multiple parts, multiple components, which you might miss on if you're too deep in your own mind, your own thoughts, and you're not listening completely, right? So listen completely, silence your mind, and simply listen to what's being asked completely and fully. All right, that's step number one. I see some comments here. Let me see if it's questions or so we got Chatura. Chatura, good to have you here. Thanks so much for tuning in. Chatura says, hi, Dean. Thanks for the session. No worries, Chatura. Good to have you here, and appreciate you tuning in. Peter says, number one tip is great. Hear is not equal to listen. Yeah, exactly, Peter. You pretty much, I mean, you said it better than I did. There's a difference between hearing and listening, folks. All right, like you gotta really pay attention to what's being asked. So simply pay attention to what is being asked. All right. So thanks, guys, for tuning in. So step number two. Now, step number two, it's whether or not you're able to accomplish step number two is dependent on step number one, whether you did step number one properly, right? And step number two is simply understand, folks. Okay, understand. Do you understand the question? Okay, have you completely understood the question? Now, you can't understand the question if you have not done step number one, which is completely listen to the question, right? Listen and hear out what they're trying to say. So step number two is, do you understand the question? A lot of you maybe you're not sure if you understand, maybe you weren't paying attention, so you're not sure if you even understood the complete question. And unfortunately, some of you are kind of afraid when you don't understand the question, because if you don't understand the question, folks, there's nothing wrong with asking for clarification. Okay, no interviewer, no hiring manager that I have ever interacted with has ever penalized a candidate for not understanding the question and asking for clarification. Because step number two, do you understand the question or understand the question? If you do not understand, there's nothing wrong with asking for clarification. Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Recruiter, I'm not sure I understand XYZ. Can you please clarify that? Or, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Interviewer, can you provide a little bit more context so I can respond to the question? What do you mean by XYZ? Nothing wrong with asking for clarification, folks, all right? There's nothing wrong with asking for clarification, because the better you're able to understand the question, because there's one thing to listen to the question, right? To hear someone out, it's one thing, but to really understand what is being asked, what the expectation is as a result of asking the question, that's a totally different story. So there's nothing wrong with asking for clarification. There's nothing wrong with that, right? I mean, unless if the interviewer is someone like totally like screwed up or very unreasonable, crazy, I don't know, like something like that. I mean, in most cases, I've never heard of an interviewer penalizing a candidate for wanting to make sure that they understand the question. So don't shy away from it. If you don't understand the question, I mean, don't let that prevent you from trying to attempt to understand the question. Like you gotta ask for clarification. If you don't clarify, you're not going to be able to provide a great response, a proper response, right? So you got to make sure that you understand the question. So Peter asked a great question. So Peter says, how many times can I ask to repeat a question? Yeah, so this is a great question, right? I mean, on the one hand, you want to make sure you understand the question, but on the second hand, if you keep repeatedly asking for them to understand, to repeat the question, I mean, that's not going to work in your favor either, right? So my advice to Peter and everyone else out there is, how many times can I repeat? Can I ask to repeat a question? Well, in my opinion, if it's a question with multiple components, right? Like some questions, they might be very complex. They might have component one, component two, component three, component four, multiple components. In those cases, Peter, I would say it's okay and it's reasonable for you to ask repeatedly to repeat certain parts of the question. But I mean, if it's a question with only one part and it's pretty straightforward, it's pretty upfront, and if you ask multiple times, that's when the recruiter or the interviewer is going to get a little suspicious. They're going to be like, okay, like this person either has terrible listening skills, or they just don't understand what's being asked. So I would say, Peter, it depends on the question. If it's a multiple component question, it's more reasonable that you might ask a few times to repeat certain parts of the question. I'd say that's completely fine. But if it's like, a straightforward, simple, one component kind of question, then it gets a little kind of, for the interviewer, the recruiter, they might be like, again, they're going to think that either you have issues with listening properly, or you don't understand the concept, or the whatever it is they're asking you about. So that would be my suggestion in regards to that, Peter. Great question there. Hope that helped. Now, going back into the steps. So step number one was simply listening. Okay, listening completed the question. Step number two is understanding. Do you understand the question? If you don't understand the question, ask for clarification, right? Nothing wrong with asking for clarity and clarification. Now, step number three, I would say step number three is more so of an optional step. Okay, but I wanted to include it there because this is very important, because some of you might not be really considering this aspect of the interview question. And step number three is simply taking mental note of potential clues the question provides in regards to what's important to the organization. I'm going to repeat that because I know that was a bit of a lengthy kind of a thing. But step number three is an optional step. But while you're listening to the question, while you're ensuring you understand the question, you have to figure out and take mental notes of whether the question the interviewer is asking actually provides clues as to certain maybe pain points, challenges, or the current situation the organization is facing. And what I mean by this is, and just to kind of paraphrase that, because I don't think I said that in the best way possible, but what I mean is, sometimes, folks, the question itself gives clues as to what's important to the organization, and something that they're currently experiencing right in this time, and it's something they're asking about because it's something very important for the role. Now, some of you might be like, well, Dean, yeah, well, obviously they wouldn't be asking about something if it's not important for the role. But that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying here is, sometimes the question itself gives clues as to what problems and challenges the organization is facing right now. So what I mean by this step number three is, while you're listening to the question, while you're making sure you're understanding the question, you got to see if the question itself is a clue as to something the organization is experiencing right now. Because after you finish responding, this might be a great opportunity for you yourself, you to ask a follow-up question to further open up regarding this particular topic. So a simple example I can give is, if the interviewer asks, for example, like a common question might be, how do you deal with difficult stakeholders, right? Now, of course, they're going to want to hear about how you deal with difficult stakeholders and how you deal with that, and maybe they're going to, of course, they're going to want you to provide some examples from the past of you dealing with difficult stakeholders. But what else? If we go with step number three, what else does this question tell us? Well, in my opinion, in my perspective, they would be asking about how you deal with difficult stakeholders, because that's something they're dealing with right now. Okay, they're dealing with difficult stakeholders right now, and that might potentially be why they're asking you about this, because this is a current challenge they're facing, and maybe they're not able to successfully deal with it, right? So if you're able to pay attention to that and make a mental note of that, after you finish responding to your question, you can ask your own follow-up question from the interviewer, and be like, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Interviewer, is this something you're facing right now? Like, are you dealing with difficult stakeholders right now? Right. And then you can get the interviewer to open up and further provide further details in regards to what they're experiencing, like the problems and challenges they're facing. Because ultimately, folks, look, When you're at the interview, do not think of yourself as a job seeker, okay? Do not think of yourself as a job applicant. Do not think of yourself as someone who's simply applying for some role. You are a solution provider. Whether you like it or not, you're a solution provider. And part of your job at the interview is to understand the problems that your customer, and yes, I'm saying customer because don't think of them as an interviewer. Don't think of them as a hiring manager. They are your potential customer. You got to understand your customer's challenges and problems, right? So some of these questions, I'm not saying this is going to be the case for every question, but some questions give clues as to current problems and challenges that they're facing at the organization. So this example, hey, we're dealing, how do you deal with difficult stakeholders? You provide your response, and then you could be like, Mr. and Mrs. Interviewer, is this something that you're facing right now? Like, is this a current challenge that you're facing at your organization with the challenging stakeholders? And they're going to be like, yeah, this is something we're currently facing. Good. Now it's your opportunity to further delve into this problem that they're facing, because they wouldn't mention it, they wouldn't ask about it if it wasn't something that might be crucial to the project or something important for them. So just this simply gives you a further opportunity to discuss this in a bit more detail, so you can better understand, better grasp this challenge that they're facing right now, so you can further open up more opportunities as to how you can help them, or even provide a few suggestions right there at the interview, right? So just keep this in mind. Again, step number 3 is you got to be listening. And hearing out whether they might be giving some clues through asking these questions, right? So before we go into step number 4, which is the final step, I think we got some comments here. So Peter says, I meant not in the case of one question, but during the conversation, can I ask to repeat after every question? Yeah, I mean, Peter, look, if you don't understand the question, then absolutely, right? I mean, I don't see any issue with it. If you require clarification, but if you're just randomly asking them to repeat with no reason as to why, then yeah, I mean, that might be a little annoying. But if you let them know, hey, look, I don't understand XYZ part of the question. Can you please clarify that a bit more? Like, if you can be specific about what exactly you don't understand about the question, that might be helpful. If you need to ask them to repeat the question each and every time, right? So I hope that helps, Peter. Great question there. Peter says, number 3 tip can be used during the end when you have the option to ask anything as well. Plus, that might lead to a red flag for you if they mention something during the question, which is a red flag as well. Yeah, absolutely, right? I mean, look, folks, the interview goes both ways, right? So the more information you can get from the interviewer, the person sitting across from you, the better you're able to also assess whether this opportunity is in line with what you want and what you want in your ideal career. And because it's got to make sense for both parties, right? Not just for the employer, the potential employer, not just for you, and like both parties have to assess whether this is the right opportunity for them, or the right job applicant, or the right candidate for them as well. So it definitely, like, asking the right questions, asking great questions. Thanks for your comment, Peter. Asking great questions, asking the right questions, folks. It's helpful for both parties, right? It's helpful. It allows you to better understand the challenges, the motivations. Understanding the hiring need is so crucial for you as a potential applicant in the role, because the better your grasp of the challenges, the pain points, the hiring motivation that the organization is facing, the better your grasp of that, the better able you're going to be to sell them and identify those aspects of yourself that you bring to the table that they would be looking for in an ideal candidate. So it's so important, it's so crucial, right? And you can't do that if you don't have that understanding of the hiring motivation and the hiring need. Now going into step number 4. Okay, step number 4 is of course the most obvious part, which is respond. Okay, this is where you actually provide a response. Only after going through these other previous 3 steps, and these 3 steps happen within split seconds, folks. Like it happens within seconds, right? Unless you require clarification, maybe that might take a couple of more seconds for them to clarify the question. So step number 4 is respond. Now, respond, it's not just about you just blurting out some response. Like, I wanted to share with you some best practices on how you should be responding when you're responding to questions. So a couple of things you want to avoid, and these are mistakes that I've seen people make over my many years of dealing with candidates. Number 1 is you want to avoid vague or abrupt responses. Maybe some of you out there, you're the strong silent type, right? You provide one-word responses, and you try to keep your responses as short and concise as possible. Not concise, but as short as possible. You might come across as very abrupt and vague in your responses. Now, it might take a conscious effort for you to make sure you don't do this. But the problem with this is if you're too abrupt, if you're too vague in your response, and the question is actually a question that requires a bit more detail, maybe some examples, maybe some context. Like you got to make this assessment as you're answering the question, right? But if you're too vague, if you're too abrupt, the interviewer might make the assumption that either you don't have a very much interest in this role or this opportunity, or they might make the assumption that you simply don't know this topic that they're asking you about. They're going to make that assumption, and they're not going to tell you this up front either. They're not going to say, well, is that all is that all you're going to include in your response, or this seems like an area you're not uncertain about. Is that the case? They're not going to do this, folks. They're going to make this mental decision or mental evaluation in their minds that, hey, this looks like someone who's not really interested in the role, or they're going to make the assumption that you don't know much about this topic they're asking about, and that's why you're being a little vague and abrupt in your response. So you want to avoid vagueness and abruptness. Now, second thing is you want to avoid the other extreme, right? The other extreme is you go into a whole long-winded response. You start talking about a whole bunch of stuff. Your response goes on for like 10, 15, 20 minutes, uh, unnecessarily long. I know some responses might require certain components and steps and processes and all that stuff. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about like your response is unnecessarily long. This can happen due to excitement. This can happen due to maybe you're a little nervous or anxious, or it could very well be that you don't know the response, the right response, and that's why you're just talking about a whole bunch of stuff. If you go on for too long, your response is way too long, way too lengthy. The risk of this is again similar to the other one, which is being too vague and abrupt. Is they're simply going to think you don't know what you're talking about. You don't know what you're talking about, and because of that, you're talking about a whole bunch of other stuff to avoid having to respond to the question being asked. This is the assumption many interviewers might make, folks. All right, and this is, I'm not just saying this. Like, this is based on feedback I've heard from hiring teams many times, and usually, typically, the feedback I've gotten from hiring teams who have experienced these long-winded responses is, Dean, it didn't seem like they knew knew the stuff that we were asking them about, because they started talking about a whole bunch of stuff, and they just went on for on and on and on. And the other risk of this, folks, when you provide responses that are way too long-winded, is you sometimes forget the original question that was being asked in the first place. I mean, how many times has that happened to us, like even in our personal lives, right? I know it happens to me, right? I mean, sometimes I talk about something, like someone asks me something, and I'm talking about something, I'm providing a response, and I go into this whole long-winded response, and I forget if I even answered the question in the first place, right? So it's natural, it happens, right? But we just have to be conscious about this. So what you want to do is, in your responses, you want to avoid those two extremes. You want to hit right in the middle, right? You want to be concise, like a balanced, concise response that's not too long-winded and lengthy, and you're going off topic and you're forgetting what the question was in the first place, and you're avoiding the other extreme, which is being too vague and too abrupt, and you're not providing enough detail, context, information in your response. Now, the level of conciseness or detail and all that stuff, hey, you got to make that assessment, folks. All right, you got to make that assessment based on the question. Some questions might be it's concise. For some questions, might be something that might take maybe a minute or two to respond. Conciseness for more complex, multi-component questions might be like 5, 10 minutes, maybe. I don't know. So it depends on the question, right? So you got to make that evaluation. You got to make that assessment, but keep it concise. All right, keep it concise, direct. Make sure you're answering the question. Make sure you're responding to the question. Otherwise, you're gonna lose the attention of the recruiter or the interviewer or whoever is asking you the question, and they're gonna start making assumptions. They're gonna start making assumptions that either you don't know your stuff, you're trying to avoid answering the question, or maybe you have a low level of interest in the role. All right, so just keep those things in mind. So that's today's topic, folks. 4 steps that I recommend you take in responding to interview questions. If you're tuning in a bit too late, feel free to watch the replay. The replay should be available right after this. So just hit rewind and just watch the 4 steps from the beginning. And again, step number 1 is simply, just a quick refresher. Step number 1, simply listen completely. Quiet your mind. Don't start thinking of a response as they're asking the question. See if you can quiet your mind as much as possible. Simply listen to the question being asked. Step number 2 is understand. Do you understand the question? If you don't understand the question, nothing wrong with asking for clarification. And step number 3 is, it's kind of an optional step, but see if the question itself provides clues as to current problems and challenges the organization is facing. Because after you finish responding to the question, it's a great opportunity for you to ask a follow-up question to better understand the hiring challenges and needs and problems the hiring team's facing right now. And step number 4 is simply respond. Make sure your response is concise, to the point, direct. You're avoiding being too vague and abrupt, and you're also avoiding the other extreme, which is going into long-winded responses and forgetting what the question was in the first place, and giving the impression that you don't know your stuff, and you're not certain about what it is you're talking about. All right, so hey, hope this helps, folks. Hope that today's topic helps, and I'm now going to open it up to today's Q&A. So any questions you have, either about today's topic or anything job search or recruitment related, feel free to let me know in the comments. I see that Instagram keeps going in and out, so I'm not sure if, I think someone wanted to ask me a question live on Instagram. So if you have a question, feel free to let me know. We got Sneha in the house. Hey, Sneha, good to have you here. My friend Sneha, who's out in the Yukon. I think it's like already like snowing and stuff over there, right? So hope you're doing great, Sneha. Hope you're doing fantastic. And hey, send me some lights, some pictures of what's that? What was it called? The Northern Lights, right? You promised you were going to send me some pictures. I've never seen that in real life, so I'd love to see some pictures of that. So I hope you're doing great, Sneha. Thanks so much for tuning in. Looks like no other questions. I'll see if, I think someone wanted to ask me a question live on Instagram. Let me see if they're still there. No, it looks like, oh my God. Okay, so Instagram crashed on me. All right, thanks a lot, Instagram. So yeah, I don't know. So I don't know what's going on with Instagram. Like sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So it looks like there's no more questions, folks. So hey, I appreciate everyone tuning in. I hope this session was helpful. Make sure you hit like, and make sure you share this stream with anyone who might benefit from today's session. Appreciate all of you who tuned in. Appreciate all of you who put in your questions and shared your comments and insights. I think there was I think I missed a question from earlier on. I think it was Sureka. So Sureka says, please help me in UK for pharmacy field in QA. Okay, so Sureka, firstly, so two things, Eureka, right? So firstly, I'm an IT recruiter, and secondly, I'm based out of Canada, so I can't really help you with opportunities in the UK for the pharmacy field. But my suggestion to you, Sureka, is what I want you to do is you need to identify, and forgive me, I don't know much about the pharmacy field, the pharmaceutical field, in terms of quality assurance. But what you want to do, Sureka, is you want to research organizations that you want to work for. Now, I don't know if you have previous experience in pharmaceuticals or the pharmacy field as a QA, but you want to identify organizations in the UK that you want to work for. And my advice is, aside from applying for any active positions they have, simply identify people that you can reach out to, right? Ideally, potential hiring managers. If not hiring managers, then internal corporate recruiters. And see if you can make direct contact. Introduce yourself. Let them know a bit about your background. Let them know what type of role you're looking for. It looks like you're looking for quality assurance role in the pharmaceuticals field. So provide some detail about yourself, right? So first of all, identify companies you want to work for. Step number 2, identify individuals within these companies. Use LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a great resource. No excuses, folks. Anyone out there, LinkedIn is a research resource. It's a great research resource. You want to use LinkedIn to research, identify potential hiring managers, internal recruiters, corporate recruiters you can reach out to. And step number 3, Sureka, send an introductory message. Send them a connection request. Send them an introductory message. Introduce yourself. Let them know who you are, a little bit about your background, what you bring to the table, and how you can potentially help them and their organization with your field and your skills. Keep the message very, very short and concise and to the point. Don't write an entire essay. Sometimes I get messages from people writing entire essays. Folks, nobody has the time to read essays, okay? Like, especially when you're reaching out to people on LinkedIn. Keep it short, concise, attention-grabbing, to the point, and be clear about what you want from them. There has to be a call to action, right? So, Sureka, hope that helps, my friend. All the best in your search. Let me see if there's any other questions. So, Peter asked a great question. So, Peter says, if I ask at the end, does my question reply the question? Does that mean uncertainty? So I guess, Peter, what you're asking is, after you provide your response, what you're asking is it okay to ask if the question made sense? So yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you want to, so after you provide your response, you can always say, hey, does that answer your question, or would you like me to clarify a bit further? Okay, no, I think I understand your question. So Peter, I think what you're asking is, if I ask at the end, does my answer reply to the question? Would that come across as you being uncertain? Okay, I got it. I understand what you're asking. So no, I mean, absolutely not, Peter. I mean, it could depend on how you're saying it. Of course, how you say it makes a difference. Because if you say, if you provide your response and then you say, does that answer your question? then yeah, you're going to come across as uncertain. But if you say it confidently, right? Yeah, like it depends on how you say. But if you say, you provide your response, and then you're like, does that answer your question, or would you like me to clarify anything a bit further? Right? If you say it like that, it depends on how you say it as well, right? So yeah, I mean, depending on how you say it, I don't think there's anything wrong with you wanting to clarify whether or not your response answered the question. So hope that helps, Peter. Thanks so much for your interaction today. And looks like there's no other questions. So hey, appreciate everyone tuning in. Shout out to everyone who tuned in and interacted with me in the comments. So shout out to Sureka, shout out to Chatura, shout out to Peter as well, and also to Sneha. So I hope that helps. I hope today's session helps everyone. And hey, just a quick heads up. So next week, there's no live stream next week, unfortunately, because next week, Wednesday at around this time, they're doing a fire inspection in my building. So they might have some fire inspectors coming in to, assess my suite or whatever it is and make sure the fire alarms are working and all that stuff so that, I'm well and safe. So I'm probably going to have to skip next week's live stream. I'll try to make up for it on Sunday night. Okay. I'll try to do a Sunday night, maybe, I don't know, 7 p.m., 8 p.m. live stream to make up for that. But no live stream next Wednesday, folks. But I will be back into it the following week, Wednesdays, 11 a.m. Eastern time zone. All right. So, hey, those of you job searching, don't give up. All right. Don't give up. Stay positive. Surround yourself and consume positive information. Avoid negativity. Avoid negative people. That's the last thing you need when you're job searching. Stay on task, folks. Stay on task. Stick to your mission, stick to your vision, stick to your goals, stick to your process, and take action on your job search plan. All right. If you take action on your job search strategy, whatever it is, at least you can assess whether certain changes and pivots need to be made. If you're only sitting on it, look, something I like to say is a bad job search strategy executed on is better than a great job search strategy you're just sitting on and thinking about. Because at least with the bad strategy, you're putting it into action. You can actually assess the results and make adjustments, pivots, and changes. It's all about taking action, folks. So look, my message to you, my final message for you for today is take action, folks. Don't give up. Keep going. Be proactive and keep it moving, folks. All right. Stay positive. I'll see you around next week. Not next week. Sorry. I'll try to do a stream on Sunday to make up for next week. But if not, I'll see you the following week. All right. Everyone take care. Have a fantastic week. All right. See you later.